the way to think of FIMS is almost like your MOT for buildings across the world, really, where parts are falling off buildings, not always reported in the press, and that's because of a lack of maintenance. And going back to what FIMS is let's do the inspection, let's gather that information, give it to you as an insight, and then you're prepared, because I think that's the watchword for anyone buying or selling a building. They need to be prepared for how do they stay compliant. We are very facade centric because we see that's there's insurance risk, there's reputational damage, there's exposure on many fronts, and if you don't have that information at your fingertips, your building could quite easily become a toxic asset as this sort of BIM data, digital twin, starts marrying up, and you'll capture and you can layer the information and tag and meta tag into that twin. You're going to be able to effectively manage that building and prove the life cycle of maintenance.
Hello and welcome to Horizons, the World Geospatial Industry podcast. Our guest today is Rod Milicevic, founder Glass Aftercare. Rod, welcome to WGIC podcast.
Thank you, Vanna. You're pleased to be here.
Great having you here. Rod, you are the founder of Glass Aftercare and the creator of Facade Information Management System, FIMS. Tell us your idea and the vision behind founding Glass Aftercare. Why are facades so important for you?
Well, it's a long story. I mean, I've always been an installer of facades. That's how I came into the industry, and then over times bought and sold different companies, and then established Glass Aftercare. Mainly because the business exists. I'm passionate about restore, remediation, especially older buildings. So our sort of sweet spot is buildings that are 15 years plus. There's some really iconic, especially in London, iconic buildings, and the tendency has been to almost throw the baby out with the bathwater, demolition or ad hoc repairs. So because I've always worked with architects and facilities managers, and that construction meets asset management piece, we really set something up to restore and future-proof building facades. Where fixing and renovation was actually very accountable, and therefore it gave asset owners and building managers effectively insight and foresight into future planning, so that with confidence they could actually monitor, manage, maintain their building, and then that's the sort of implementation level. So we would do inspections. And then bring them some insights. And when we thought, actually, this needs to be more of a standard, and that's where the FIMS piece has really come on. It's having somewhere where the information can be stored. It can be a management system. O&Ms are, I think, very underrated in the space. Everyone knows how valuable they are, but care over the years, especially over the last sort of 20 years, where we've moved from a paper-driven to a more digital space, and things have been lost. Original construction drawings have been lost, and that hasn't helped, I think, the facilities management industry to maintain the assets to the value and best service for the building.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. And also, I was going through some reports while preparing this interview. So I found out that according to a UN Environmental Program UNEP report in 2022, buildings were responsible for 34% of global energy demand and 37% of energy and process-related carbon dioxide emissions globally. On this note, I'm sure you agree that optimizing energy use and reducing carbon footprint are on the top of asset managers and building owners' minds, right? So, will you tell us how FIMS, the Facade Information Management System software that you have created, how does it help optimize these parameters and improve building efficiency while also cutting operational costs?
The way to think of FIMS is almost like your MOT for buildings. So a bit like when you take your car in, and people are looking at exhaust fumes and emissions, and is it legal, is it compliant? Legislation that's been brought in, like over here in the UK, you've got the Building Safety Act. But the way we look at it is when a building's built, ISO 15686 and some other standards are there for life cycle assessment and performance of that building. So if the building is maintained, then obviously the building is going to last longer. The minute that maintenance plan isn't adhered to, or people haven't taken into account the estimated service life, then the chances of that building being efficient. So a long story is, for instance, if your gaskets and seals are not managed and maintained on the outside of the building, you're going to get water ingress coming into your building, and that's going to degrade the sealed units, which effectively is going to reduce the energy, solar gains, solar reflectivity. Things that are going to affect that facade would mean the energy inside the building, the air conditioning and the heating is going to overwork. So I think we focus on the fabric and the facade of the building because it's effectively like the skin, and the skin is keeping out a lot of the environments. And so I think that's what we're looking for, what our contribution is if we take care of the skin, your organs inside are all going to be working more efficiently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is making a lot of sense. So, on that note, can you also help us understand how does FIMS help in risk management? And you also talked about standards, meeting the standards and all that. Can you help throw some light on this?
Well, through inspection, obviously, you're aware of what you have when you've collected that information. There has to, I mean, the obvious choices are facade engineers and facade manager will take those insights and they will effectively use best practice, use all the compliance layers that they're aware of, and then they will be able to sit and almost do a desktop review of that and say, okay, well, how long is this? How sustainable is this building? And they will take in risks. So, for instance, if something's been there for 5 years and there's material degradation of either aluminium or glass or gasketry, then they can make a judgment and say, okay, I can give you some CapEx or OpEx budgetary information of how to manage your building going forward. So the risk of not being aware of what you have, almost expecting but without inspecting, is very dangerous and that's what we see a lot of failures across the world, really, where parts are falling off buildings, not always reported in the press, and that's because of a lack of maintenance. And going back to what FIMS is let's do the inspection, let's gather that information, give it to you as an insight, and then you're prepared, because I think that's the watchword for anyone buying or selling a building. They need to be prepared for how do they stay compliant. I mean, we saw with the advent of unfortunate Grenfell incident where you had products that weren't fit for purpose, and now there's been a big sea change. And I don't think it's just about fire regulation now. I think it's going to be about product generally fit for purpose. And in terms of how the industry, and certainly a lot of your members, from what I've seen, and the whole geospatial industry, we're capturing data. There's a lot of drone footage, a lot of LiDAR, and different techniques, and we're creating a digital twin of the world. And I think it's going to be an interesting space over the next 5 years where a lot of those converge, and actually people are sharing that information in almost like one big world digital platform.
That's true. Absolutely true. So, in that sense, we're seeing that even for maintenance, risk management, and in several aspects, preventive maintenance, all these aspects, FIMS really can help, right? So, in that sense, is it right? Is it right to say FIMS is also contributing to improving sustainability quotient of buildings? Would you want to elaborate on this aspect, the sustainability aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean the sustainability, energy, the ESG really is really important.
Mm.
We're trying to make it that the biggest asset I imagine that a building manager has are the people inside, because they're the ones that are using it constantly. They're the ones that are giving feedback. You want to keep them safe. You want to keep them comfortable without it costing a lot of time and effort. And at the same time, everyone now has everything has to be accountable and verifiable. And that's really again why that data driven maintenance piece that everyone's talking about, we are very facade centric, because we see that that's there's insurance risk, there's reputational damage, there's exposure on many fronts, and if you don't have that information at your fingertips, your building could quite easily become a toxic asset. So I think being able to respond and have dynamic maintenance plans, instead of just relying on reactive call outs, and only responding when there's a major problem. And I say major problem, it might look okay, well, we've just got a small crack, but it's the symptom that's effectively, a lot of these buildings are made up of 3, 4, 5,000 pieces of glass. So if you're seeing a pattern, then you need to respond to the root cause. So any of those degradation trends that we see need to be recorded and reported somewhere, so that we're effective. I think as an industry we should be thinking of stewardship. You take a building on and then you look after it, and you're there for 10, 15 years looking after this asset, so that you can hand it on to the next whoever the next owner is. So it has to be transparent data, I think.
True that. Okay. Tell me, Rob, how is Glass Aftercare using or integrating geospatial technologies and also life cycle data to turn these facades into safe, sustainable, and value-driven assets?
Well, we use various different things. So drones, thermals. Well, if we take the drones, thermals, lidar. So we use things like mappable from inside, mainly just because it's a user friendly. The experience of walking around is really good for a client. But what we found is we can tag inside it, and there are a few models that we use where we can tag, and therefore the sharing collaboration. If I had a building that I'd worked on, I could invite you and we could innovate together and collaborate, and different parts of the world could join that team meeting, and we could see the points of pain that we want to discuss. And I think that's what the geospatial, there's no time zones in those type of when we want to detect these anomalies and things on a building. We're seeing a lot of, and I've seen some really interesting tech that I'm keen to connect with some of your members already, and how they're using. We're building some of our own tech to ingest that information in, so that it could be automated, especially for the sort of commercial real estate market. So when an owner or building manager or property, they're either doing due diligence to buy or due diligence to hand over, that they've got a clean bill of health, and effectively they say, look, here are the ways that we've managed it, and here's the MOT. But generally, the fusion that's coming from the geospatial industry, and why we wanted to join, is we're up in our level of being in this space. So we're here to learn really from some of the great members that are already there, and to take that static information and then bring it to life. So I think that's what geospatials will allow. It brings static O&M information, or even a static images of a building, and then allow them to be walkthroughs, allow them to be interactive, very collaborative, and I think that will save time, money. It'll get to the nub of the problem a lot quicker. And people will be able to see that operational history of the building.
Yeah. Talking about operational history of the building, I'm specifically curious about understanding older buildings which have higher operational energy footprint a lot of times, and apparently due to the less efficient systems at that time or poor insulation, right? What are some of the ways Glass Aftercare helps revive older buildings?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that we're obviously thermal bridging and sealant fatigue, outdated glazing systems. A lot of the what we've managed to do is to say, okay, rather than, I mean, we did one recently where it was a roof light and it was over 30 years old. The complexity of actually trying to create a whole new roof light and taking it off a very tall building, especially 25, 30 years ago, the landscape around that building would have been very different. And today it's very congested. So to get cranes and some of the technology in there and the machinery to get in there would be very difficult. So we said, okay, well, can we work with the materials that's there and bring it back to life? So it's a remediation, a repair. It's very sympathetic. You've got to have it look the same, because this particular one wasn't listed, but often we are working on listed buildings. So it was take the components apart, clean them, regasket them, new units. So we're upgrading, the thermal and the solar gain and G values and U values. So we're effectively making some enhancements, but without adding too much weight, because that's a factor. So that the original engineering and the original architecture aesthetics have to be respected. So, and now that's all started. We're going back to the sort of geospatial. That started with having a drone survey, and taking the point cloud and because there was no O&Ms, there was no drawings, recreating that scan into some drawings so we could make, and working with some top world engineers, we worked with Arabs on that, and actually recreating the roof light in such a way that now it looks brand new. Really pleased with that. So we will do a case study on that. But generally, I love older buildings because if they will speak to you and they will tell you, and I think actually the quality of build, 20, 30, 40 years ago was superb. I'm not talking about some of the, we're not talking about St Paul's Cathedral where, that's a completely different, but facade where it's modern technology, relatively modern, with panels and aluminium and glass and some steel fire screens. One of my first major jobs was at the British Library, which was steel fire screens and bronze. So we work in a variety of materials. But yeah, going back to your, how do we help revive older buildings, and their operational footprint? I think it's mainly because there's some easy wins: better insulation, renewed gasketry, gaskets around screws so the water ingress doesn't come in, making sure that over time people tend to use silicone and pump it full of block up all the drainage routes, so they're away from the original system design. So bringing it back to system design, a system reset effectively. So we're going, our truth is restoring the integrity of that building and those materials back to the original wherever we can. And if there are modern upgrades, we'll bring those into play as well.
Yeah, true. So, Rod, you briefly mentioned about commercial real estate, and I want to ask you a question on that. Assessing existing buildings before a long lease or purchase is a very important aspect for
Hmm.
when it comes to commercial real estate, right? How
Hmm.
can Glass Aftercare help investors understand the health of a building and its facade systems? And what kind of geospatial are you implementing here to carry out these surveys and assessments? Anything specific?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a um, probably one of the most important areas is in commercial real estate is the due diligence piece, and
Mm.
our facade. We get as many companies do that are working in that space. They'll get an invitation, say like I need an asset condition survey. And the traditional one is a physical tactile. So we do a lot of physical tactile. We're in a BMU, a cradle, and we have rope access technicians. So we'll be, and now even with the guys that are physical doing it, we've enabled them with headset technology where they're capturing, so they can be more hands-on. We've got, we use Argo glasses, which we've been partnered with Cognitive Spark. And that allows the guys to be wearing glasses, but we can share information two ways. So while they're on the building, they can be receiving information about specialist pieces that we want. They can comment, they can take pictures. So it's a two-way collaboration. But in terms of when you want to capture the bigger piece, we will always go for a thermal. Our sort of go-to is thermal and a LiDAR scan with point clouds and drone tech, just for speed, and plus it's all in one place. So I think creating the digital twin, and I would urge anyone who's really got a building is have a digital twin, because as this sort of BIM data digital twin starts marrying up, and you're capturing, you can layer the information and tag and meta tag into that twin, you're going to be able to effectively manage that building and prove the life cycle of maintenance. Going back to the MOD, it's providence. When you hand something across, you can say, look, we've managed it really well. And then when you're going to sell it, I think the speed of transaction is going to be really fast. The things that slow down and kill deals in commercial real estate is not enough information. So, it's that same old mantra: inspect it, collect the information. Let's look at the insights, and then there's an implementation plan, and there's no surprises in that whole chain of thought.
Yeah, right. So, Rod, you're based out of London, and I also want to understand what is your business footprint in terms of the geographies the business serves, and what are your plans for expansion?
Yeah, we currently operate UK wide and Ireland. We've worked in Dublin and across most of the UK. We're London. We focus on London because there's just so many buildings that are wanting these services, and that's where the transactional space is the busiest at the moment. We have been asked to work abroad in Hong Kong and Dubai and even Australia, and we're exploring those, and would welcome working with anyone really who has a flavour for this and wants to collaborate in some way. So yeah, we're always open to that, and we're always developing our FIMS tech. So at the moment we're building something that should speed up and create a really nice dashboard for that insight to implementation really quickly, according to the FIMS standard, which is based on ISO 15686, ISO 55,000. So it's current. So we're trying to stay current and use tech that can bring those implementation capex and opex decisions really quickly.
Yeah, true. All right. So, my next set of questions, Rod, for you is about your association with WGIC. You are a very valued member of WGIC. Just want to understand what encouraged you to join a platform and an industry body like WGIC.
I think from what I saw, I've been to, I've seen the accounts a few times now where I've been on different courses, and I actually see it represents the intersection of the geospatial intelligence and real world impact. And that's exactly where FIMS operates. So we join to collaborate, learn, contribute, in an evolving dialogue, I think, and how geospatial data can underpin safety, sustainability, and performance in the built environment. And we haven't even tapped the sort of satellite imagery and things that's going to come in and sort of add additional layers.
I want to understand your views on how leveraging the strengths of WGIC member companies to create seamless workflow, your customers' problems, I mean.
Well, from what I've seen, a lot of the partner companies, member companies, and WGIC's strength really it lies in the ecosystem. So, satellite imaging firms, AI analytics providers, survey companies, digital twin specialists. There's so much that I didn't even know came under the banner of geospatial. But anyway, connecting with these sort of disciplines, I think we can create a seamless workflow. And then from scan to compliance, complex facade data, decision ready intelligence for clients, I think that's where it's all really going to come together. And I think our vision to make facades visible, verifiable, valuable, I think that's where we will work the best. We're in a collaborative environment with WGIC's members and the council itself.
Great. That's absolutely true. That's a great value addition to WGIC member companies. And I'm hoping that you would find the same working with the other member companies.
Yeah, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for this conversation, Rod. It was lovely catching up with you.
Thank you.